It's the Growing for Market podcast.
Garlic attracts people because of the potential returns, that it's looks like a very profitable crop. And over the centuries, countries like Spain have learned so much, and China, about the growing, that you take every precaution that you can and you mitigate as much as you can. And then if you keep those practices up, it just gradually improves, because garlic is easy to grow, but it's hard to grow well and consistently.
Hello, and welcome to the Growing for Market podcast, where we talk about growing, marketing, and the business of growing flowers and vegetables for local markets. I'm Andrew Mefford, your host and the editor of Growing for Market magazine, proudly celebrating 35 years in 2026 as the magazine by and for vegetable and flower market farmers. If you're enjoying the podcast, just wait till you see the magazine. Go to growingformarket.com for more. Also, if you could give us a follow and a rating, it really helps other like-minded people find the podcast. And now, let's take a minute to hear from our sponsors. It's with their generous support that we can bring you the podcast for free. This episode is sponsored by Nifty Hoops. Nifty Hoops designs and builds high tunnel systems for growers who want dependable results. What stands out is that Nifty Hoops tunnels are complete systems designed by experienced builders with the details worked out ahead of time. That means the core components are included from the start, like end walls, ventilation, doors, baseboards, and double-layer poly, rather than being added later. The tunnels are designed for real wind and snow loads, efficient assembly, and long service life. You can choose a self-build kit with guidance from written manuals and videos, or a community build where Nifty Hoops works alongside you and the project gets completed in one day. Nifty Hoops has built more than 1,500 hoop houses across the country, including many funded through the NRCS High Tunnel Initiative. They're known nationwide for predictable outcomes and ongoing support. If you're planning a high tunnel project and want it done right, you can learn more at niftyhoops.com. It might take money to make money, but an on-farm event is the only marketing channel where the customer pays you to show up. Think about it. 30 people at a $20 U-Pick is $600 before anyone's even heard about your farm stand, CSA, or workshop series. On Farmhand, you sell tickets that instantly collect a name, email, and phone right at checkout. So you're not just making sales, you're building a list you can sell to for years. Farmhand handles the ticketing, the caps, the reminders, the QR check-in, and the follow-up emails. Free to start, you only pay when a ticket sells. See how it works at farmhand.partners/GFM. Today, we have the pleasure of welcoming Warren Ham and Roshan Ghimire to the Growing for Market podcast. Warren founded August's Harvest 35 years ago, and he now runs the farm in Gads Hill, Ontario, about 2 hours west of Toronto, with co-owner Roshan. During the last 35 plus years, Warren has scaled the farm to over 100 acres of alliums, supplying markets in Canada and the US. Perhaps most relevant to us today are their efforts to supply top quality, clean seed garlic to North America and the United Kingdom. This involves growing garlic from tissue culture in order to guarantee pathogen-free seed garlic, which is pretty common in seed potato production, but I've never heard of it being done with garlic, and I wanted to know more about that. So without further ado, welcome to the Growing for Market podcast, Roshan and Warren.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm pleased to be here.
Okay, so before we get into the seed garlic, can you tell us a bit about the farm?
Well, we're located in southwestern Ontario, right in the heart of the corn, wheat, and soy belt. We're on a heavier clay loam. Soil holds the moisture pretty good. We get about an average of 37 inches of rain a year. We're in the lee of Lake Huron, so we're in the snow belt, and often that means that we get a pretty good coverage of snow over the garlic as it overwinters as insulation, and that's a bonus on that end. When we got the farm, everything in the area is tiled, and we've moved our tiling from 60 feet down to 15 now, so we're able to get on the land a lot quicker. We partner with a dairy farmer next door and we follow his alfalfa crops. So we're in our land 1 year, on his fields, separate fields, for the next 3 years. And he has our farm in alfalfa. And then in the 4th year, we come back in, and that does a lot to clean weeds, open up the soil with the roots, nitrogen, and an earthworm, boost. We were certified organic until 2014. We ran a 400-member CSA as well. But in 2013, the growing gods kind of brought us the lesson of nematodes and virus load. So we had to make a decision, and it was to focus on garlic. And we used conventional methods to clean the seed, bring the virus down. And so when that happened, it was kind of a double whammy. And we were at a point then about 15 to 20 years in when we were looking, around the world, and we became aware of a meristem culture program in California. And while working with the University of Guelph and the Ontario Agriculture, they were doing a meristem strawberry program. And the researcher, Becky Hughes, at the time, was able to transfer the technology of the meristem from California to the research station in New Liskeard in Northern Ontario. And then we started producing virus-free garlic. So with regards to nematodes, we were really looking at treating the seed with nematicide and getting that out. And so with the introduction of the virus-free clones into the system and no nematodes, we gradually started to bring back our yields and our quality. We then also expanded our reach in terms of meristem programs to Spain and Mexico as well. So from that point onward, we've been in the back alley with the nematodes, and yield is there. And so we were able to bring our yields back to levels that we had before, and even better with the virus, as we learned about how that clogs things up. Yeah, so from then on, the next step in terms of the farm was to start to develop value-added product. There's a significant portion of garlic that won't meet grocery store standards. And so by doing that, we were able to grade harder and have our garlic inspected less often as they started to realize we were bringing in consistently high quality produce. And then we could also convert the seconds into hydroponic green garlic, black garlic, dehydrated, minced, puree, and things along that line.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I saw you have quite a lineup of value-added goods. And so you're culling really hard and putting the culls into the value-added products?
That's right. And it also lessens the pressure on seed selection, right? So you have more garlic to ship in different forms, and you can then select your seed better.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that makes sense. I'm glad you have something to do with the seconds, and something that hopefully it makes it profitable for you to cull really hard, to have some value added goods to put the culls into. And I want to ask you more about the meristem project, but I want to loop back on the 2013, because so I was working in the seed industry at that time, and garlic wasn't my crop, but I think that's the year I remember I think that was a year where there was seed garlic shortages, right? Because I think, if I remember correctly, I remember there was 1 year where we realized that a lot of people were having a problem. I think it's with the garlic bloat nematode, and they realized that not only was it in their soils, but it was with a lot of the producers of seed garlic, right? And so all of a sudden, a lot of the producers who had been producing for the industry planting stock were off the table because it was in their soils. And so I seem to remember there was shortage of seed garlic for a lot of people who were looking to buy that year because a lot of the regular suppliers were taken off the market. And does that sound like the right?
Yeah, you've got it 100%. I mean, so pre-understanding nematodes, there was probably a year or two where stuff was shipped that should not have been shipped. So, hindsight's wonderful.
Yeah.
And then even after that happened, I think there were people who passed the problem along, and it is what it was. Yeah, so it was a major hit for us. We dialed everything back. Got rid of our sales force. We got rid of. We were down to a skeleton crew, reimagining things, getting by with what we could, in sales to the culinary market and things along that line. So it's one of those things that happened.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm glad you guys made it because that sounds like a disaster year. And also, I'm glad you guys are doing what you're doing because it sounds like you're really careful. I think maybe if people weren't farming, it's hard to believe that was 13 years ago, 2013, but people who may not have been farming through that period may almost like take for granted that the garlic seed stock is clean, as it should be. And I want to make clear that it's, efforts of people like yourselves that it's that way. And people who weren't farming that year may not understand. I think there was kind of like a reckoning where people realized like, okay, like it's a really big problem, right? Because those nematodes, if you plant that garlic, they can get in your soil. I don't know how long they stick around for, but it's a really big problem, right? I mean,
they could be dormant for 40 years.
Okay. Yeah. So
it's the most populous creature on the face of the earth, and there's like 35 phylums and a billion subphylums, and so it's quite extensive. And I mean, the converse is true. You can plant clean seed into soil that has nematodes in it, and you'll attract it that way as well.
Yeah. Okay. So there's why you want to be really sure that your seed is clean, right? Because if you plant, even like you said, if you have clean soil and you plant in garlic that has nematodes, could be could stick with you for decades.
Yeah, and the converse is true. I mean, so it's it comes down fundamentally to treating the seed. And I'm in early geezerhood now, and I look at things in a little bit longer term. And so I'm over the time I've moved from words like ensure and guarantee to mitigate, and because I think as well as in growing in life, your expectations they're often. It's very important to question your expectations of what you believe or hope is going to happen, and allium and garlic by its very nature is just dirty. I'm not aware of any soil that doesn't have fusarium unless it's been steamed or sterilized or anything along that line. So the concept of absolute fusarium free garlic is something that that's likely not possible. It's possible with steaming your soil, or but then you also get rid of your earthworms. They get rid of a number of good things. So I tend to, because it's been a vegetative crop for years, and I think now that we're speaking, I think one of the key factors is or important things to note is people coming into the business, and garlic attracts people because of the potential returns, that it's looks like a very profitable crop. And over the centuries, countries like Spain have learned so much, and China, about the growing, that you take every precaution that you can, and you mitigate as much as you can. And then if you keep those practices up, it just gradually improves. Because garlic is easy to grow, but it's hard to grow well and consistently. Like the garlic falls off the side of the truck and ends up in the ditch, and you have a patch of garlic in the ditch, but to get a consistent yield of, 4 or 5, even 9 to 10 times, that's when it becomes a lifestyle. Or this, I don't hold truth per se, but I have some things that I know.
Yeah. And now let's take a minute to hear from our sponsors. It's with their generous support that we can bring you the podcast for free. If you grow for market, performance is everything. That's why so many farmers are turning to Burpee's Farmers Market. Dedicated to professional growers, Burpee is now offering non-GMO seeds in larger quantities, bred and selected for standout flavor, strong yields, and the kind of visual appeal your customers crave. All farmers market varieties are trialed at Burpee's research farm in Doylestown, Pennsylvania, where expert horticulturalists test for germination rate, vigor, disease resistance, high yield, and consistency, things that make a difference in the field and to your bottom line. The seed assortment includes USDA certified organic varieties, Burpee bred classics, heirlooms, and exciting new introductions. Burpee's been doing this for 150 years, and they're still creating new varieties with growers like you in mind. You can check out the full lineup at burpee.com/farmersmarket. That's burpee.com/farmersmarket. And now, back to the show. So you say that garlic is just by its nature dirty. Do you mean because it tends to be vegetatively propagated and that it's easier for viruses and like everything that we're concerned about pathogen-wise comes through easier on vegetatively propagated than seed-propagated crops?
Yes. But by its nature, it's drawing in from the soil. It's in the soil. And the fruit itself doesn't grow outside or above, whatnot. And so it gains that way. Plus the leaves are a steady transmission of thrips, aphids, just moving the last piece of DNA or the last piece of whatever they've eaten into the plant. So thereby treating the seed that makes it healthy for what it's going to face in the soil, being mindful of thrips and aphids, treating for that lowers the potty viruses and the yellow dwarf viruses and all that stuff that they're moving around. So it's important, and mites, I should say, yeah. So the seed stock is important to qualify. So like the umbules or the bulbils, they're a fruit that's above the ground. And the virus load in those things is what the scientists tell us is about 10% of what the virus load would be in the bulb itself.
Oh, okay.
So when we use our meristem clean seed, we also take the bulbules as an economic way of propagating it. And, I mentioned I'm in Spain after the 5th generation from the greenhouse. That seed is never used again. So the first generation, second, and then 4th generation is the last. And then they bring in new stuff all the time. So you have to keep track of what you're planting, which generation, where, and how long it's going to be used. So I think the longer term nature, and just to speak to the thing about seed, I was part of a project out of Israel to create true seed in garlic, the way it had been done in onions. And it never really kind of clicked. I think all the stuff was there, but garlic is belongs to everybody. It's not like Monsanto or DeKalb having Terminator genes and all that kind of stuff in it. So, and because the industry is the size that it is, smaller size that it is than onions and potatoes and everything along that line, the community or the world community is a lot smaller, so we know the growers in Argentina and Spain and Mexico and the States and like the big commercial growers. And the information passes around. So the larger, harder economic people have done the numbers and they use meristem. And there's another portion of the bulbule program that I think has potential. The world's commercial garlic is grown mostly south of the 39th parallel as a soft neck, as either an artichoke or silver skin. And the vegetative seed is like 15 to 18 cloves compared to a hardneck or a rocambole between 6 and 10 or 6 and 12. So they've got a huge economic advantage. I think it's possible that at some point in the future, there are people like us who are working hard on the bulbule program, because I think it can level that economic disparity in terms of seed. And the manpower of clipping, trimming, and that kind of stuff is going to be kind of universal. But I think with developing the bulbules, and some of them you can get them to commercially viable things in 2 years. An average garlic farmer is looking at holding back 25% of their crop to plant. So if you're able to use bulbils in a efficient or in a best manner possible, you could probably up that to as close to 90% of your crop being marketable, and then the remaining 10% is vegetative seed in the form of bulbils for second, third generation.
Yeah, that would be huge if growers could go from 25% of the crop to hold back to 10%. And so, okay, and that's interesting about the bulbils because I've always been told that you can grow garlic from bulbils, but I've never tried it. And yeah, and because I've been told it took multiple generations to go from one of those the bulbils to a full size garlic plant. So you're saying that you're working on it so that it could go from 2 seasons, like you grow a bulbil for 1 year, I assume to size up, and then the second year it gets to the actual regular garlic size.
So yeah, it's very varietal dependent. Our grower Jan from the Ukraine, he's been doing that for years. And so when their family had to leave Ukraine, he came here, and he's doing that. There's lots more people who are doing it. So when I say variety dependent, out of the 7 different varieties, normally artichoke and silver skin are soft necks and they don't develop scapes. However, in northern climates, garlic has, everybody is under the impression that GPS means global positioning system. It really means garlic positioning system. And by that, a soft neck brought up into our, R5 or whatever we are, climate, it will shrink the amount of cloves that it manifests. And in a year or two, it'll start to send up a seed pod or a bulb or a scape. So the other thing is, they talk about the phenoplasticity is when we sell 6-clove porcelain garlic to Tennessee or Kentucky, the next year it manifests as 9 cloves. Right? So the GPS figures out that I've got this many hours of daylight and this many days and et cetera, and it changes so the genetic thing is the same, but it's just altitude, soil, and latitude. It makes a marked difference.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, because I know years ago we had an article in Growing for Market, and I mean, this is an idea that was widely shared, so I'm not saying it's proprietary to Growing for Market or anything, talking about how one of the people thought there were way more garlic varieties than there really were because of those, what do you call it, morphological plasticity, or the differences. Like, that's what I've always been told is garlic is very different if you plant it, in Ontario versus Kentucky. The exact same garlic variety will look different in Ontario versus Kentucky. And that's what you're getting at, right?
Yeah, you're referring to that 2000 SARE grant that was done by Gail Volk.
Yes.
At the Syracuse. Yeah. So a little knowledge is a dangerous thing, And if I had a nickel for every time I had somebody sitting in front of me or on the phone and says, I know what such and such garlic looks like, and this isn't such and such garlic because, and it's, so I think they brought like 200, I call them colloquial or tribal names. All right. So when our precursors or our forebears came to this country, often they brought a couple bulbs of medicine with them and they planted it. And people from Germany grew German white. And 10 minutes across the border in Poland, they grew music. Genetically exactly the same. But if you were standing at a festival and they said, do you have any German white? And I would tell them this, and they go, yeah, I still want German white. So I think the focus of the tribal name of garlic is actually good for everybody because irrespective of what that does, it makes them attached to their heritage, to their crop, to the things along that line. And there are fewer, well, now that we're talking about it, it's kind of like somebody attaches themselves to a political leader who tells them that 1 and 1 equals 3. And they're there. And so, and then there are people who go, oh, so music and German white are genetically the same? Yes. And I think the colloquial name add interest for people stuff, and everybody can't be an expert on everything. And so I go along with it. And as long as the seed's healthy, good shape, and done the best thing, it'll do that. And just this past week, somebody asked me for pictures of a Roken bowl. And as I was going, you know what? It's probably worthwhile if I show some archival photos. This is what it looked like that year, this year, that year, in this soil, in that area, in this. And it can manifest, differently. And so I'm trying to get people to say, yeah, this is what it looks like planted in your soil and your latitude, but mine, it's a little bit different.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, that's interesting. And I'm interested to ask more about the clean seed, but I got to ask first, how did you guys get so into alliums? I mean, like looking at your website, it sounds like you do a lot of garlic, and then you've got like the elephant garlic and shallots, and how did you get to the point where you're running an all allium farm? I mean, I get there's probably some synergies with growing crops all in the same family, but how did you get to that point of being an allium focused farm?
It's really called the buyer. The buyer for garlic is, I think it's called ethnic. So, I mean, it has some kind of an odd name, and they're buying garlic, shallots, onions, blah, blah, blah. And so we don't grow the onions here and the shallots and the pearls. We have a farmer who specializes in that, and he's happy for our connection with the buyers. And people who ask for garlic also ask for, elephant garlic, which is a leek and a bit of a, curiosity for everybody. So it's really developed, in that way. Yeah. And, you follow researchers. There's Rina Kamenetsky out of the Volcani Institute in Israel. And it's kind of funny because we were doing stuff and she was following me and I was following her. Then we met at the Garlic Congress in Spain in 2014, and it was like Vulcan mind lock. Blah, blah, blah. And you get to travel, and so it becomes something that you don't learn out of books, but something that you absorb.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I was just curious, is the seed garlic grown separately from the garlic for eating? Is it more like the seed garlic is like graded out as the biggest cloves from regular production or something like that?
A little bit of both. So the bulbil production and solo, we call them, the bulbils produce in the second year often a solo clove, and that can be, depending on variety, that can be anything from something the size of a dime to something the size of a silver dollar, or one of those big U.S. coins.
Yeah.
Loonie here. And and often when you hit a certain gram value in that, on those things, they will produce a full-blown bulb the next year, or they'll produce just a larger solo. So we keep the air seeds or the bulbules and the solo in a separate thing because they're a whole other nightmare to harvest in terms of planting them's easy, but getting them up. And then from that we go to the first and second generation, and third generation, and we'll pull seed from that we need, and then other stuff that we can resell or use for value added.
Yeah. Okay. So you're saying that when you plant those bulbules, the first year after you plant a bulbule, it makes just a single bulb, more like a tulip or something like that, not the segmented clove like people are mostly think of it for garlic?
Pretty much. There are exceptions. Sometimes sure. a double vernalization will happen where it gets cold and then it warm and the cold, and then it'll separate. But yeah, and some varieties produce just enormous bulbules, and which provides an enormous thing. And I think we're also learning about maybe some conventional thought in terms of having space between is good. And I think maybe on the bulbules sometimes competition is more important at that one instead of a regular space. So yeah, so we're working on commercializing that process of harvesting them. It can be very labor intensive. So there's, those bulb planters from Spain, from Holland, that have the mesh and then the corms or the bulbs in them, and then they go into the ground and then they harvest it inside the two mesh. So That's a little bit beyond my ability or scope right now. I know somebody who's trying it. So we're looking at some way. We're putting nets on the ground right now, spreading the bulbils on them, and then putting soil over top.
Oh, interesting. So is the idea that you pull the mesh and all the bulbs are in it?
Yeah.
Interesting. Actually, no, I hadn't heard of that. So thanks. That sounds interesting. We'll have to check back in with you in a couple of years and find out how that's going. Okay, well, before we get into the clean garlic seed, can you guys tell us what pathogens people need to be concerned with when buying seed garlic? Like what, I thought before we talk about the seed, we should talk about make sure we're all clear on what we're trying to avoid.
So bulb and stem, mites, virus, and fusarium, and expectation. I just say that as I think our thinking needs to be cleaned up as well. I think we just in terms of a new grower may have the numbers put into their spreadsheet, but those numbers don't include the pathogens, and the things that can happen. So bulb and stem nematode mites can be treated with a soak, and then and fusarium, and then that mitigates the amount of fusarium present in there. And then in terms of virus, that'll be clean seed from meristem, and then also something to address thrips and mites during the growing season. Thrips, mites, and aphids.
Okay, so you're saying that as with most things in life, nothing is guaranteed, and so am I right? You're saying that like all these efforts that you're going to, nothing's 100%, but you're keeping the presence of all these pathogens very, very low,
right?
And do you recommend growers soak for, like you're saying, soak for nematodes and the mites and stuff like that?
Yeah,
like where
fusarium.
Just in fusarium. And so, what is the soak in to get rid of all that stuff?
Well, we have a couple of products that are approved here. Yeah, Luna, and I can't think of the one right now, but it's a fungicide.
Yeah.
And the researchers found that it also handles nematodes. So that's what it's two fungicides and Colonel Sanders special sauce. So.
All right. And I'm not familiar with Luna, but there are certified organic options for there's fungicidal soaks that.
Yes, there is. Yeah.
Okay, I was pretty sure there were. I just want to make sure because I know obviously not everybody in the audience is certified organic, but I think a lot of people in our audience either are or sort of like organic by default, like want to use certifiable products.
Yeah, and this is a good opportunity to I think to address that. In many of the commercial organic programs in Argentina and Spain and Mexico, organic seed is very seldom used. It would be a seed rule exemption, and they would use clean seed and treat it for that. And to replant the organic seed year after year, I'm not 100% sure on the efficacy of the fungicides, and I don't know per se that they would deal with the nematodes, which would be another very complex system of a hot water dip, which is maybe the chamber is going to have a bullet in it, maybe it's not, maybe you're going to cook it, maybe you're not. And I think that's something to consider as an opinion for organic growers to watch.
Yeah. Okay, well that's a good point to make. If people are like really want to keep their soil clean, they should probably be treating the seed incoming onto their farm as well before planting. Okay, so what is the Meristem Clean Seed Program then? Can you explain that to us? And how does it, so I had the question written, how does it ensure the cleanliness of your seed garlic? So I guess I should say, how does it ensure the cleanliness of your seed garlic as much as possible?
Yeah, the scientists from the meristem and the clove will search for the cleanest possible. And I'm not 100% sure how they clean it, how they eradicate the virus and the other stuff. They pop it in a petri dish, and they grow the things that look like sprouts from the market, and from there, those things are turned into a clove, and then the clove is put in a series. All this happens in a screenhouse, and then they'll multiply up the generations until the fourth year. They got garlic that's as healthy as Roshan, as opposed to as healthy as me. And Roshan's a health nut, and so it's a good comparison. I would be like planting something that's full of fusarium and all the rest of it. And the stuff coming out of the seed house is like Roshan.
It's Roshan.
It's
okay.
good and strong. Yeah. And then that's in the big programs, they will use that up to the 5th year, and then that's gone.
Okay, because like you were saying, and this probably applies to other vegetatively propagated crops, that just the diseases and pests and viruses and everything build up faster, right? Because I mean, if people haven't thought about it before, I guess the plant making seed in a way is almost like sending out an escape pod or something.
Cool.
Although people will know there are some diseases that will come through on seed too. So like you hear about hot water treating seed and all that kind of stuff. So, but like, that's why we're talking about this, because we're talking about a vegetatively propagated crop instead of a seed propagated crop. Okay. So you use the tissue cultured plants to get you a very as clean as possible planting stock. You use that planting stock for four generations. And then after that, it all gets eaten. Do I have that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so how many years have you been doing the tissue cultured crops for?
It was on the radar in like 2011 and 12. And we worked with the strawberry people up at New Liskeard at the research station there. And then it became more dur and dur. It became a sort of a regular system. And then we became aware of companies in Spain doing that. And then some private ones, and then we just moved our stuff there.
Okay, cool. And I want to make the point, this is pretty common in the world for vegetatively propagated crops. I just know there's it seems like there's a lot of confusion out there between like what's natural and genetically modified and all this kind of stuff, and make clear this is not not genetic modification. It's suitable for organic production. In fact, like our listeners may be familiar with tissue culture because we did an episode with Wood Prairie Farm a while back, who does certified organic seed potatoes up in northern Maine. And they talked about how they use tissue cultured potatoes to make sure their organic seed potatoes are disease free. In fact, I'm not an expert, but I think like if you've ever wondered what you're paying for with seed potatoes, I think there's some standard about how many generations like the seed potatoes that you're selling have to be away from the original tissue culture to be considered like seed potatoes. That's the difference between seed potatoes and just planting table stock, is the seed potatoes are coming from a certain number of generations from the tissue culture. So I know it's really common in the seed potato industry, but you're the first one I've ever heard about doing tissue culture with garlic. So I know you said there's other important garlic growing regions of the world that do it. So do you do the tissue culture, or I know you said the lab over at Guelph, tell me just a bit about the actual tissue culture process, or like where it comes from.
So I moved away from the program in Guelph, and we deal mainly with the Spanish, who have a few different programs, some that are, well, they're all commercial, but some are grower owned, like a group of a cooperative will have their own lab, and you can bring stuff to it and they'll clean it up, and they'll do the stuff for the particular variety that you're after. Yeah. So that in terms of, I think it will become more common. I'm aware of a couple entities that have offered me, that are, I don't know I don't know the full story. I haven't followed it up. And there are, labs telling me that they can splice something in the garlic to make it virus free forever. So I haven't, followed that up. But yeah, so in terms of meristem culture, the process will be commercial, is commercialized, and it'll hit refinement, and it may get closer and closer and closer to, more growers.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I think you pretty much explained how the tissue culture keeps the supply clean by making sure you're propagating from really, really clean stock.
Yeah.
Okay, so mainly I was curious about that process, and also I wanted people to know that that's how we're trying to avoid incidents like what happened in 2013, right? Like Yeah, so I guess I wanted people to understand, A, I was curious about the project, and B, I wanted to understand that people are going to great lengths like you guys are now to really keep the seed supply clean, because we all saw what happens when the seed supply gets infected.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think you've explained the meristem project pretty well. Is there anything else you want to say? I want to ask you about like what your tips are for people planting your garlic, but I want to make sure we like close the loop on the meristem. Did we say everything we need to say about the meristem project?
Well, if there are questions, people can forward them on to you or get in a hold of us. I can't think of anything right at this moment that's jumping out at me that needs to be addressed. I don't think.
Okay, no, I thought that was a really good explanation. I just want to make sure. Okay, so we've covered the lengths you guys are going to keep the garlic seed clean. I wanted to give you the chance to talk directly to some potential customers. So you've got a lot of experience growing garlic, and I know we don't have time for a full garlic masterclass, but can you tell us what you tell your customers as far as best practices for having a successful garlic crop and getting the most out of the seed that they get from you guys?
Yeah, the short version and the long version. I think the short version is healthy seed, raised bed, depending on where you are in terms of the raised bed, in terms of moisture, depending on where you are, some protection from winter wind. So if you're not getting snowfall, we have at times put up snow fence on the west side so that the prevailing west winds will dump the snow on top of the beds. And there's people who grow strips of corn in the spring, and then they plant in between those strips of corn so the snow will catch and drop onto the garlic bed for added insulation.
Oh.
So I think, lots of organic matter, depending on what you're after in terms of a bulb. If you want skin, 3 weeks after the scape comes off, that's when you want to be. And there was some. I think there's some good growing tips in growing for market. I think I've copied and pasted that link into stuff that I send to people. It's quick, easy, fun, right? And so I would, in a broader sense, I would say people who have had some battle scars over the years from dealing with all these things, it's possible that they're a better source to look towards, right? Healthy cloves, and then plant early. So I know there's things about planting under the second moon of the on and on, and things like that, and by all means, but the more root development you get before the frost settles in, that would be pretty standard scientific stuff. Some protection, organic matter, and then weed pressure. Like with everything, it scales back yield quite dramatically. So if you got a flame weeder, whatever you have, I think those are brilliant for organic operations, and we used to use them. And then rogue your crop. Anything that's too yellow, just get it out of there and use it for green garlic. And there's a lot of commercial growers that are using harvesters that pull a plant out of the ground that day and send it for drying. In our climate, I kind of say, if we can get 3 days when the plant's dead for it to draw the bricks and the good juice down out of the stalk, that's great. The braids are there for centuries for a reason, and that was to get all of the good nutrients out of it and make them hard like baseballs. And then that, depending on where you are, that post-harvest time can be critical for the growing of mold, fusarium, all kinds of stuff. And we have a tendency, our kind of ballpark is we'd like to leave the plants out for 3-4 days, just pulling the stuff down. And then we mostly leave the roots and stems in the field. And we're quite aggressive on curing. Another thing that, if it's a good idea, somebody's probably generally done it. But I think one of the things that came to me was commercial onion and garlic drying operations make a lot out of bringing the temperature up. So it's higher than the relative humidity of the atmosphere. And so when the cooler air comes in, it draws it off. But what we've done in the last 3 years is we've got some pretty commercial dehumidifiers that are in the system. So whether it's raining outside and the outside humidity is 100%, we're still drawing water and moisture out of our crop. And so I sometimes get garlic in from growers that has been almost dried, and then there's problems that happen from mold to everything else that starts to grow. So I think that, and then there's areas like in the arid areas in the States, like they just they could put garlic in a bin and just leave it, and they don't put any air on it, and it cures up beautifully. So, depending on where you're at in terms of humidity and moisture, you want to get those first few days, I think, are critical in terms of eliminating a lot of problems in the future.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that all sounds like really good advice. And the importance with getting it dry is that there can be post-harvest like molds and things, right? That will form if you don't get it dried down quickly enough and to a certain point. That's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, and so there's also in some commercial operations they will put the garlic with half a stem and the root ball in the drying bin, and you're drying at least double the amount of matter that you need to dry, and everything has to work so much harder. And it's a pain. You have to do this before or after, but so I just think it's there's nothing worse than standing looking at a bin of garlic, wondering what the center of it looks like. Is the air getting there? Is everything happening? And this way, you lower the static pressure in the bin, more air gets through, and yeah. So I mean that's for most of the audience, I mean, hanging that up in hanging the plants up for a week is brilliant. 2 weeks is better. So
yeah. Okay. Yes, that must be really discouraging to start unloading a bin of garlic and find mold in the center. So yeah, we don't want that. All right. So assuming that the garlic harvest is underway, if not already done this year, how's this year's crop looking?
It's good. We had a fairly mild winter, all told. So the very little winter kill. We're on some good fields that are right up against a bush that's on the west side, and got lots of snow dumped on them. And the water, we got to the irrigate. We're in an interesting place. Some years we irrigate, some years we don't, and just the way that the weather is reported, sometimes it's like the percentage, and it's like you can't look at it anymore. You just got to turn the water on when and if you get more, then that's okay. So yeah, so it's not the bestest ever crop, but it's above average.
That's pretty good. Okay. Well, that's good. And am I correct that you can supply Canada and the US with garlic seed? And if so, how would people order? But I guess what I'm really looking at is, does your garlic that comes to the US go through the mail, or is it a different kind of shipping? Like, are you shipping garlic straight to people through the post?
No.
Or does it get across the border? And okay, well, can you tell us how the ordering is different for Canada versus the US then?
Yeah, so we do a phytosanitary inspection. So the CFIA comes in and pulls samples and does the 5%, 10% and all that kind of stuff. So they do the phyto, and then we have so that's an expense, and then we have the customs and the trucking and the shipping. So we have a spot. We have our larger customers that will cross the border, and our truck will deliver directly. And then for orders under 300 pounds or 500 pounds, something like that, it goes to an associate in the States, and they'll send it on courier to the. So we have sort of right now, if people get their orders in by the middle of August, there's a discount and we can ship it whenever they want. And so we have 3 kind of ship dates that we try to amalgamate that. So to run customs and a phyto for a 300-pound order, it becomes expensive. So if we can put that into that, the phyto and the customs and the crossing and the freight, it brings down the ancillary cost, quite a bit.
Okay, yeah, I see why you're doing that then. Okay, so is there a minimum order size for shipping to Canada or the States? And also, do they need to get their orders in by a certain time to be able to get for 2026 planting?
First come, first serve, so if they're after large stuff, order early. And they can come to our website and leave their name, and then Julie will get them the varieties, the pricing, the dates, the shipping dates, and all that kind of stuff. And then they can give us a call, and if they have garlic questions, and we can talk garlic.
Yeah, it sounds like you can definitely talk garlic with people.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll give you a chance in just a second to tell people your website. They can probably find you. But I say that because that's really the questions that I had for you. But is there anything else I should have asked you or that you'd like to add before we let you go?
Is there anything to talk about black garlic?
Yeah. So we're producing black garlic now. And I think there's a proliferation of those rice cookers, on Amazon for small stuff like that. And I've been around long enough that in the prior to 2000, I thought it was going to be the answer to everything. And it just, people would look at this shriveled dark bulb sitting in the grocery store and they'd go like, why is that still out there? And it just never caught. And it never caught. And I think at one point we had 15 of those little rice cookers, knocking stuff out. And then an opportunity came up for a commercial machine, and we took it, and it was way beyond our capacity. And then just really in the last 3 to 4 years, it's become a mainstream nutraceutical food. In Germany, it's sold in health food stores, and the Koreans ferment everything. And it's a little bit different process. It's Maillard, but it's something that I think it's something that we are providing custom production for people repackaging and food service.
Yeah,
and retail.
Okay, I had never heard of black garlic until I feel like just a few years ago. But so is the market good for it now?
Yeah, we've scaled up our production. Well, we find, food service, and surprisingly, the retail market consumer market is, in my opinion, way behind. There are ethnic communities that are all over it, and then there are foodie stores that are showing it. But I think, to the extent that it's cracked the food service, as it's part of restaurants innovating. On stuff. So
yeah. Okay. Well, that's cool. That's great to see another, another version of a local food product that we can make getting more popular.
Yeah, and it's like it's easy to do. It's hard to do well. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, unless there's anything else, I feel like you guys have been really generous with your time. I appreciate it and your information. Where can people find you online or social media or wherever you want people to look you up?
Over to Roshan. Yeah.
Yeah, so they can find us in our website, www.augustsharvest.com. So we call it as augustsharvest.com. And if there is any queries, they can put up their comments or order online, and we'll get back, follow with the customers and send them what they need.
Yeah, and we have the Talk Garlic line, 877-272-1742. Yeah, so they can.
Yes.
Okay. Great. Thank you guys so much. I've definitely learned a thing or two, and I bet our audience will enjoy hearing about all the trouble you go to keep the garlic seed supply safe and clean, which I really appreciate. because it's such an important crop for so many market farmers, and they're going to be out of luck if they get a lot of those problems that we talked about. So appreciate your time, appreciate your efforts, and thanks so much for coming on the podcast to tell our audience about it.
Yeah, it's we're very thankful, and it's cool that you've been there all the time. It's nice to make contact. Good way to make contact with people.
Yes. All right. Well, thanks, guys. I'll let you get back to the whatever part of the harvest or processing you're at, and we'll let's keep in touch.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Growing for Market podcast. If you've been enjoying the show, please consider giving us a follow and a rating or a review. It really helps others find the podcast. For more tips and tricks from farmer to farmer, check out our magazine at growingformarket.com. Whether you're a commercial grower or just want to grow like one, subscribe to Growing for Market magazine for the nitty-gritty of growing, marketing, and the business of market farming. We publish 10 issues per year with articles written by experienced farmers on topics ranging from tools and techniques to farm business operations and marketing. If you've been listening to the Growing for Market podcast and haven't yet checked out Growing for Market magazine, we've made a change so you can try the magazine for free. We've added a free month to the beginning of all first-time subscriptions. Try out the digital or paper magazine for a month, and if it's not for you, cancel within 28 days and you'll never even get billed. All subscriptions get you a year of the magazine, plus 150 downloadable back issues from the last 15 years and over 1,700 archived articles. With digital subscriptions starting at just $39 a year, head on over to growingformarket.com and subscribe today to benefit from over 3 decades of writing by farmers, for farmers, in Growing for Market magazine.